The secret about Sagittarius that was hidden for centuries, until now. Have you ever felt, deep in your bones, that you were born for more than the life you've been living? That there's a calling whispering through the wind, a force greater than logic nudging you toward a horizon only your soul can see? If you're Sagittarius, this isn't imagination. It's memory. Soul memory. The kind that doesn't come from this lifetime, but from something older, wiser, buried in the sacred fire you carry inside. Sagittarius, you were never meant to live quietly. You are not here to conform, to shrink, or to silence the truth that burns in you like a wild flame. And yet, somewhere along the journey, you may have forgotten just how powerful, just how luminous you truly are. Not because you failed, but because the world, fearing your light, taught you to doubt it. Today, we begin the sacred act of remembrance. You are about to hear truths that were once whispered in temples, now rising again in this time of collective awakening. And if you feel your heart racing as these words reach you, know that it's not coincidence. It's alignment. This is the message your soul has been waiting for. If you find resonance in this journey, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Not for me, but for your future self, and for every Sagittarius still asleep to their fire. Gate 1: the power you were born with, but taught to forget. Sagittarius, what if I told you that the very force that makes you feel too much in a world that craves conformity is actually the exact energy that could transform everything around you? The problem is not that you were born too big. The problem is that the world has grown too small for your flame. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is an energetic truth. You were born with a frequency that has been misunderstood, suppressed, and even feared. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's disruptive in the most sacred way. You are here to break patterns, not repeat them. You are not just a seeker of truth. You are a truth revealer. And that makes you powerful, in ways even you may not fully comprehend. As a child, you may have been the one who asked too many questions, the one who challenged authority, not out of rebellion, but because something in your spirit could not tolerate injustice or mediocrity. You saw through falsehoods even when no one else seemed to notice. You felt confined by school rules, societal boxes, small talk, and fake smiles. You weren't trying to be difficult. You were trying to be real. But over time, that sacred fire, the one meant to lead others into freedom, was slowly conditioned out of you. You're too blunt. Why can't you just go along? You dream too big. Be more realistic. Don't say that out loud. And each time you heard these words, a part of your fire dimmed. Not because you agreed, but because you were told that survival meant belonging. And belonging in this world often requires shrinking. But what if I told you this? You were never meant to belong. You were meant to lead. The ancient astrologers called Sagittarius the philosopher. But that title is incomplete. You are not only here to ponder truth. You are here to embody it. Live it. Walk into a room and change the entire frequency just by being. But that kind of energy comes with a cosmic responsibility. It means people will either be drawn to you or triggered by you. And most of the time, both. This is why you were taught very early to suppress your power, not through violence but through subtle scripts. Like, tone it down. Be less intense. Don't always speak your mind. Let me tell you a story. A woman named Daniela, a Sagittarius born on December 3rd, came to one of my private mentorship circles. From the outside, she looked confident. She ran her own marketing firm. She had traveled to 29 countries. She had a warm, contagious laugh and a mind that moved faster than most people could follow. But beneath that glow, she carried exhaustion. "No one sees me," she said during our first session. "They see the version of me they like, but they don't see my fire." Not really. Over the course of weeks, she began to unravel what she called her armor of joy. The smile she wore to make others comfortable. We traced it back to her childhood, where she had learned that being too passionate, too outspoken, too much would get her in trouble. So she learned to package herself in palatable portions. Not to protect herself, but to protect others from being overwhelmed. But here's the truth. The world doesn't need a diluted Sagittarius. Needs a free one. By the time Daniela reconnected with her fire, something shifted. She stopped apologizing for her directness. She rewrote her website to reflect her real voice, not the polished version she thought clients wanted. She started hosting workshops on ethical persuasion, blending truth with soul. And her business tripled, not because she learned new tactics but because she stopped hiding. That's the secret no one tells you. You don't have to become anything. You only have to remember who you are and allow it. Sagittarius, your original flame is your birthright. And it is not something you need to earn or justify. It exists whether you believe in it or not. The only question is, will you honor it? Or will you suppress it to make others comfortable? There's a common wound in many Sagittarians I've worked with, the fear of being too honest. You've probably heard that truth should be softened, sugar-coated, or delayed. But your gift is to deliver it raw, with precision and compassion. And yes, sometimes people will push back. But the truth is like fire. It burns through illusions. And what remains afterward is clarity. That's your gift. To burn away the fog. But you must also learn this: your fire needs boundaries. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. And not every battle is yours to fight. The shadow of your power is restlessness, self-doubt, and the need to prove yourself. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Your being is already proof. Spirit is calling you now not to hustle harder, but to rise in integrity, to live in alignment. And that means returning to your natural frequency, unapologetic authenticity. You were born to teach by being, to lead without domination, to love without needing to rescue. And when you stop negotiating your light, the world starts to organize itself around your truth. So ask yourself now, where have I dimmed my fire to be accepted? Where have I spoken half-truths to be liked? What parts of me are begging to be unchained? There is no medal for keeping the peace by abandoning yourself. There is no wisdom in staying small to make others feel safe. And there is no reward worth having if it costs you your soul. This is the gate of power, Sagittarius. Not power over others, but power over your own alignment. You are the torchbearer. And the moment you stop hiding your flame is the moment everything begins to shift. Your voice gets stronger. Your timing sharpens. Your presence becomes magnetic. Because the world does not respond to pretending. It responds to resonance. And when you resonate with your truth, miracles are no longer the exception. They are the rhythm of your life. Your journey has just begun. But already you are remembering what no one could teach you because it was never lost, only buried. And now you rise. Gate 2, the hidden pain that blocked your flame. Sagittarius, for all your fire and vision, there is a quiet ache you've carried longer than you care to admit. It's not the ache of failure. It's the ache of containment. That heavy feeling in the chest when you hold back your truth because you're afraid it will make others uncomfortable. That subtle guilt that rises when you shine too brightly and sense someone else dimming beside you. You've been told you're bold, lucky, strong. But few ever asked what it costs to carry that kind of light in a world so accustomed to shadows. Your wound is not always visible, even to yourself. It's not the dramatic heartbreaks or the clear betrayals. It's more insidious than that. It's the moment you sense that your joy was too much for someone you loved. The day your questions were met with silence, not answers. The time your excitement was brushed aside with a tired sigh or a dismissive shrug. And little by little, you began to withhold. Not because you stopped believing in your magic, but because you began to believe it made others uncomfortable. You see, Sagittarius, your truth is not casual. When you speak from your soul, it pierces. It awakens. And not everyone is ready for that. Especially the people you once tried so hard to please. I once worked with a man named Javier, a Sagittarius born December 17th, who had built an entire life out of making others feel at ease. On paper, he was successful. He ran a wellness business, hosted retreats, had a loyal partner. But when we sat in session, his voice trembled when he said, "I feel like I'm always editing myself. I want to say more, feel more, be more. But I don't know how to stop playing the role they expect from me." He wasn't in pain because of what had been done to him. He was in pain because of what he had done to himself, silently, habitually, to survive. This is the hidden pain of Sagittarius. Not just being misunderstood by others, but becoming a stranger to your own soul because you've been trying to fit instead of expand. There was likely a moment in your life when you tried to tell the truth and it backfired. Maybe you stood up for someone and were punished for it. Maybe you expressed your belief in something higher, freer, or unconventional and were laughed at. Maybe your bold love scared someone who wasn't ready for depth. These moments planted seeds of self-censorship. and you began trimming your truth into pieces people could handle. But your truth was never meant to be edited. It was meant to liberate. And yet, Sagittarius, here's the heartbreak. Some of the deepest betrayals you've experienced have come from those closest to you. Not because they didn't love you, but because they couldn't match your courage. They couldn't walk the fire with you. And instead of admitting that, they projected their fear as criticism. They called your passion drama, your honesty harsh, your vision naive. And because you love deeply, even if you hide it beneath jokes and bravado, you took their words to heart. You began to wonder if maybe they were right. If maybe you are too intense, too loud, too free. And so the pain began not with rejection, but with self-doubt. And that self-doubt, Sagittarius, is the heaviest weight you've ever carried. But I need you to hear this clearly. Their limitations are not your truth. Your soul came encoded with expansion. You were never meant to play small, to shrink your wildness for someone else's comfort. You were not built for lukewarm relationships, beige careers, or surface-level conversations. You are a soul of depth and velocity. And if people fall away as you rise into that, let them. Not everyone can walk with fire. The wound you carry is not a flaw. It's a signal. It means you were trying to be loved in a way that required you to abandon yourself. And now that wound is your gateway to wholeness. If you're willing to feel it fully, to sit with the grief of all the versions of you that had to shrink to survive, to mourn the parts of yourself you silenced to keep the peace. But from that grief, something miraculous happens. You begin to return. You begin to breathe deeper. You begin to remember who you were before the world taught you to apologize for it. I asked Javier one day, what would you say if you weren't afraid of being misunderstood? He paused, eyes full of tears, and said, I would say, I am here to break every rule that kept me silent. I would say, I'm not sorry for being bright. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because he had healed fully, but because he finally chose himself. And that's the turning point for you too. Your flame is not meant to burn quietly. It is meant to illuminate the path for others, but only once you stop hiding from its heat. The pain you feel is not a weakness. It's the echo of all the truths you never gave yourself permission to live. So let the ache rise. Let the memories come. Let the tears fall. Not because you're broken, but because you're releasing what no longer belongs. You don't have to carry this wound forever, but you do need to honor it. It is sacred. It marked the places where you made yourself small for love that couldn't meet your magnitude. But now, Sagittarius, the era of self-abandonment is over. This is your reclamation. Gate 3, the return of the spiritual archer. Sagittarius, you were never meant to wander just for adventure's sake. Beneath your hunger for new lands and ideas is a deeper longing. One that has followed you through every airport, every lover's touch, every late-night epiphany and lonely morning. That longing is not for place or power. It is for belonging to something greater. A spiritual home, a soul connection, a truth so vast and sacred that it silences all the noise. And this longing is your compass back to yourself. You are the spiritual archer. Not because you always hit the mark, but because you are willing to aim toward the unseen. To chase the scent of meaning, even when it leads you far from comfort. But over the years, you may have confused spiritual seeking with spiritual escape. You may have told yourself that freedom meant detachment, that love meant losing yourself, that stillness was weakness. You've been chasing stars while your heart whispered, "Come home." Let's be honest. Love for you has been a battlefield between the soul and the mind. Your heart wants to surrender. Your spirit wants to fly. But you've been afraid of being caged, misunderstood, or asked to compromise the wild parts of you that feel closest to God. So you've learned to keep a safe distance, to offer fire without fuel, to stay 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But this half-presence is killing your joy. You weren't made for lukewarm love. You were made for soul-level combustion. I once worked with a Sagittarius woman named Chloe, born December 6th, who had been in and out of spiritual circles for years. She had studied yoga, astrology, plant medicine, and ancient wisdom. But when I met her, she was exhausted. I've traveled the world for truth, she told me, but I've never felt truly seen, not once. When I asked her what she feared most in love, she didn't say heartbreak. She said disappearance. I'm afraid that if I truly open, she whispered, I'll lose myself again. That fear, Sagittarius, is so common among you. The paradox of the Archer is that you long for sacred union, but fear being tied to a version of yourself that doesn't fly. So instead, you flirt with intimacy. You offer wisdom but not vulnerability. You show up in full fire, then vanish in silence. And each time you do, you confirm your worst fear. That true love isn't possible for someone like you. But that's a lie born of old wounds. The truth is this: love is not a prison when it is chosen from alignment. When you love from wholeness, not from need, love expands you. It doesn't shrink you. It gives your arrow direction. It sharpens your intuition. It anchors your spirit in a way that frees you more than solitude ever could. You don't need to run anymore. You need to return, not to someone else but to the divine intimacy within yourself. The place where your wildness and wisdom coexist. Where you are not asked to change but to become. The spiritual archer only loses their way when they forget they carry both the bow and the target. Your destination isn't out there. It never was. The person, the path, the purpose, they are all within you, waiting to be seen. For Chloe, this realization came one morning during silent meditation. Tears fell, not from sadness, but from a sudden sense of recognition. I thought I was searching for God, she said, but I was actually searching for a version of me who wasn't afraid to be loved. After that day, she stopped hiding behind spiritual roles. She stopped dating people who couldn't meet her soul. And months later, she met a partner who mirrored her fire. Not by taming it, but by honoring it. Sagittarius, your heart is sacred terrain. You do not owe it to anyone who cannot walk beside you barefoot, who cannot meet your truth without fear. You are not here to perform spiritual wisdom for applause. You are here to live it, to love from your core, to pray by how you move through the world. Your temple is not a building. It is your body, your voice, your yes, your no. Every time you speak from soul instead of strategy, you are aligning with the divine. And when it comes to soulmates, let's go deeper. Your soulmate is not just someone who understands you. They are someone who remembers you. Someone who holds the same frequencies, even if they express them differently. Someone who has felt your spirit long before they knew your name. And no, you may not meet them in a temple or on a mountaintop. You may meet them in a grocery store on a Monday, in a moment so mundane it feels like the universe is playing coy. But you'll know. Not because of sparks or signs, but because of peace. Your nervous system will exhale. Your mind will quiet. And for the first time in a long time, you will stop reaching and start receiving. Not because you finally earned love, but because you stopped resisting it. Because you remembered that you are worthy of the very thing you've been offering others your whole life. This is the sacred return, Sagittarius. The return to soul-led love. The kind that does not demand that you shrink or explain. The kind that sees your fire and says, yes, I choose to walk with this. The kind that does not promise perfection but presence. The kind that reminds you that your greatest spiritual path may not be solitude, but union. Let the archer return to the temple, not to kneel, but to stand in wholeness. Let your love be an offering, not a performance. Let your freedom be a bridge, not a wall. And above all, let your heart stop apologizing for how deep it wants to feel. You are not too much. You are exactly enough for the one who sees you clearly. And they are coming. Or perhaps, they are already here, waiting for the version of you who finally stopped running. Gate for the fire of awakening. There comes a moment in every Sagittarius's life when the outer journey begins to lose its thrill, and the inner fire, the one that has always quietly burned, suddenly roars with clarity. This is not the fire of rebellion or ambition. This is the fire of awakening. And it doesn't come with noise. It arrives in stillness, in the breath between heartbeats, in the quiet knowing that the life you've built must now give way to the life you were meant to live. Sagittarius, you were not born for the ordinary. Your path was never supposed to be predictable or polite. The universe carved you from cosmic stardust and raw truth to serve as a compass for others who've lost their way. But how can you lead them if you are still denying your own direction? The awakening begins when you stop chasing meaning outside of yourself and realize it has always been within. Not in the books you've read, not in the countries you've seen, not in the lovers you've left behind, but in the moments you finally stopped running and asked, what if my purpose is not a destination, but a vibration I came to embody? I met a Sagittarius man named Elias, born December 2nd. who spent years thinking his purpose was to build a spiritual empire. He started projects, wrote manuscripts, led retreats, but nothing stuck. Every door he opened seemed to close again. He was angry at the universe. "Why give me this vision if you're just going to block me?" he asked. But the universe was never blocking him. It was refining him. Elias was still leading from ego, from wanting to be something rather than simply being. His awakening came one night, not in meditation or ceremony, but while watching the sunrise alone. The sky cracked open in soft gold, and a voice inside him said, "It's not about building. It's about becoming." In that moment he wept, not from sadness, but from the relief of finally letting go. And so must you, Sagittarius. Let go of the idea that your mission must look grand to be sacred. Your presence, your truth, your laughter, your courage to speak when others stay silent. These are revolutions in motion. You don't need a platform. You are the message. You don't need an audience. Your frequency changes the room. But this power only activates when you stop hiding behind potential and step into embodiment. When you stop asking for signs and start becoming one. The fire of awakening doesn't wait for perfect timing. It responds to commitment. It answers the moment you say, "I will no longer delay the life I came to live." And yes, the fire will burn away the illusions. It will cost you comfort, complacency, the version of you that played small so others wouldn't feel threatened. But what it gives in return is sovereignty. The kind of self-possession that cannot be faked. The kind of inner radiance that makes others believe in light again. You are the torchbearer, Sagittarius. And this world, tired of masks and mediocrity, is craving your fire more than ever. Not the fire of opinion, the fire of presence. Not the fire of reaction, the fire of wisdom. Not the fire of ego, the fire of essence. Let your fire awaken others, not by force but by frequency. When you walk into a room fully aligned, you don't have to say a word. Your energy speaks. Your choices speak. The way you listen, the way you laugh, the way you no longer apologize for your depth, that is the sermon. That is the revolution. And as this fire awakens fully, something else begins to emerge, your legacy. Not the one written in achievements but in impact. In how people feel after encountering you. In how many lights you spark simply by refusing to dim your own. This is the moment where your personal story becomes a collective offering. Where your healing becomes a path others can follow. Where your awakening becomes a ripple that moves through families, communities, generations. But don't expect applause. Awakening rarely earns a standing ovation. It often brings discomfort, distance, and moments of solitude. You will outgrow conversations. You will lose relationships that were tied to your unawakened self. You will feel alone at times, not because you are lost but because you are ahead. Let it be. The spiritual archer does not aim to impress. She aims to liberate. He aims to illuminate. They aim to realign the world, one sacred truth at a time. So Sagittarius, light your fire without apology. Let it cleanse what no longer serves. Let it ignite what has long been buried. Let it rise through your voice, your art, your choices, your stillness. Let it touch the forgotten corners of this world that are waiting to feel alive again. This is your time. Not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been beneath the noise. The philosopher, the rebel, the mystic, the flame. And now that the fire is awake, there is no turning back. Conclusion: the path was always within. Sagittarius, you have walked through 4 sacred gates. You have met your doubts, your longing, your fire, and your soul. And now you stand at the threshold of a new existence. Not one shaped by survival but by purpose. Not one dictated by the past, but awakened by the truth pulsing through your present. You were never meant to follow the crowd. You were born to walk with truth in your chest, wind at your back, and wisdom in your voice. The world may have tried to tame you, shame you, slow you, but you are not here to be contained. You are here to be clear. Clear in your essence. Clear in your mission. Clear in your light. Remember this: your freedom is not a luxury. It is your sacred responsibility. Your joy is not a distraction. It is your most magnetic force. And your presence, fully embodied, is the prophecy this world has been waiting for. So take a breath. Feel your fire. Forgive yourself for the years you lived as someone smaller. And now, without apology, without delay, choose to rise. If these words spoke to the deepest part of you, like this video so your energy joins others in awakening. Share it with a fellow Sagittarius who may be ready to remember. Subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom so that Sophia may continue to walk beside you. You were never lost, Sagittarius. You were always on your way home.